Ladies and gents, PepperBelly back again with some more squad, and in this video I want to discuss something that's actually been brought up on the forums recently, and I didn't really get my chance to voice my opinion in the actual forum topic since it was closed by developers, because they pretty much wrapped up their overall conclusive thoughts on that particular subject, and that subject is blood and gore. Now, this has actually been heavily debated in the past as well, which obviously the developers have already come up with a unanimous decision, which they relayed again in that particular topic, expressing their final decision on whether or not to include blood and gore in the game. And obviously there's a lot of people that are in favor for it, and also a lot of people that aren't. My personal take on it, which I wanted to discuss, is how I am in favor for it, and I want to give my reasons why I think it is, because not only would the actual blood and gore effects influence the immersion and the overall atmosphere of the game, it would also allow for some different gameplay characteristics to come into fruition. Now obviously, this is just my opinion, and it wouldn't change anything, and I seriously doubt the devs would see this and think, quickly drop everything and get this man some gore, because it's critical, because he says so. I seriously doubt it, but in the end, I still want to express my personal take on it, and hopefully, in the future, since the game is going to be mod friendly, this could be something actually added as a mod, since the developers seem pretty adamant on not making it a priority at all at any point during development. And the thing is, they actually already put in blood and gore effects to a degree, but just didn't really like it, because they thought it was kind of morally a little bit too much for the game, as per a quote from one of the developers. I'm not going to quote it specifically because I don't really remember it. But basically he said it didn't really feel awesome or cool that, you know, shooting a body and watching blood fly out of it. Now, I think a realistic depiction of actual blood and gore, so obviously you're not going to be blowing people's legs off or shooting their arms off with an M4. You know what I mean? It would have to be a realistic depiction. And I think a game like Red Orchestra 2 does an excellent job of creating a really dark, gritty atmosphere that warfare actually is in the real world. Because you hear these soldiers screaming, they're panicking, they cry, they yell, it's like an actual crazy ordeal to be in, and when you're actually running through the environment hearing this and then seeing someone get hit with a artillery shell and their body parts are all over the place in a realistic fashion as you would expect, with not like a ton of blood, but just like, because believe it or not, you can get blown apart and there's not a whole lot of blood everywhere. It kind of gives you this sense of like, holy shit, this is what war is like. It's really this chaotic, and it can almost impact your mindset of war just by playing a game like that. And you've probably heard me say this numerous times if you've been watching my squad videos, and I talk about how authentic the game currently feels as it is. And the idea of adding additional, you know, blood and gore to the game in a realistic manner, so not over-exaggerated like most games tend to do. Obviously I'm not going to shoot someone and suddenly there's going to be giant blood splatters all over the walls behind them. That's not really how that works. But pooling blood from wounds on the body, I mean, even games from PlayStation did this. I mean, Siphon Filter, way back in the day, I remember the first time I played that in like the late 90s, early 2000s, I remember shooting a body and seeing right where the wound was, blood would form. It'd be like that, his shirt where the wound was would be soaked in blood. And it was impressive for the time, and I don't understand why most games don't do that. I mean, I remember playing in 2004 or 2005 Fear, and Fear actually showed a gouging wound. Like when you would fire it, you'd actually see the bullet hole with the blood out. And I think decals like that are kind of critical for games nowadays. Like there's no reason not to have that element in a game. Like that's a feature that should be there. We're 2015. We're going to be 2016 in a few days now. It makes no sense why we don't have the minimal realistic effects of what it looks like to get shot when games from way back in the day did it in a really excellent manner. It doesn't have to be overly grotesque and gruesome like Gears of War. It just has to be an accurate depiction. Like I said, Red Orchestra 2 does an excellent job of it. As for actual impact on gameplay itself, obviously whenever you're shooting somebody with a high caliber weapon, if you're using a 50 cal or you have a rocket or grenades, it's going to deal significantly more damage depending on where you're hit, right? We all know if you take a 50 cal to the leg, chances are you're going to lose it. If you take a 50 cal in the chest, it's going to blow a huge freaking hole through your chest. I've actually heard stories from friends of mine who have been overseas, who have actually seen, and the way that this guy described it is like, he was on sentry duty, manning a 50 cal, but then he had to, like, his picket or his sentry time was over, so he got off and his friend went on. As soon as his friend went on, within 10 minutes, he was already firing rounds at a target. And the way he described it is like a cookie crumbling. If you actually held a cookie in your hand and kind of crumble it, and the way the pieces fall off, think of that being the guy's body. And obviously there's a lot of videos online you can go and watch. I mean, you can go look at the stuff that's happening in Ukraine, Syria, all over the world. You can see there's tons of videos out there you can look at that show you real footage of combat, what it looks like, how savage and brutal it really is, and just how fucked up it actually is. And I think that in a gameplay sense, obviously if you shoot someone with a 50 cal, you shoot them in the head, their head, you know, has a massive gash wound in it, and or either that, you pop a part of their skull off or whatever. You know, it sounds grotesque and brutal, but that's exactly what war is. That's just how it is. And an accurate portrayal of that makes you kind of think, like, holy shit. Like, when you shoot a human model, when I play a game and I shoot a human model and I go and look at his body and I see the devastating damage I did to him, it's kind of like an eye-opener. You know, you realize just how actually effective and brutal these weapons really are. You think a bullet's just like, oh, you know, a nice little bullet hole, but then you play a game like Sniper Elite where you watch the bullet actually ripping through the organs and dealing a bunch of damage, and it kind of, you know, gives you some perspective on exactly how deadly these weapons really are. And in a game like this, with how insane the sound asset is, and considering that characters actually yell and scream and gurgle blood in a very realistic and brutal manner, it just doesn't really make sense why there wouldn't be actual blood effects. Like pooling blood underneath a body. You shoot someone, blood will pour out over time, and a puddle underneath their body, or where the wound is will show a blood pooling effect there as it's soaking the body armor and the uniform itself. Little things like that really enhance the experience to show you just exactly how brutal war is. And again, from a gameplay perspective, the medic, playing as a medic, which is what I was trying to say earlier, if you get shot with a 50 cal, or, you know, you get dismembered, your leg gets blown off, or you get a shot in the head, something severe, obviously in real life you wouldn't be able to bring that person back. And from a gameplay standpoint, it kind of helps to differentiate what a medic can and cannot do. So if a guy gets shot in the head, you cannot revive that person because obviously it was a lethal blow. If somebody gets shot or blown up so their legs are missing or it's dismemberment, that person would just be considered dead altogether. It gives you a chance for you to impede the medic's progress, which is kind of critical when you're thinking about battlefield tactics. The ability to deal a shit ton of damage to the enemy so they cannot reestablish themselves is a gameplay tactic. It alters everything that happens moving forward. It makes grenadiers far more deadly. I mean, they're already deadly as it is, but imagine being able to potentially destroy the shit out of someone so that the chances of them being revived, they don't get it. They're instantly dead. It's kind of the same idea where if you get shot once, you go down, a medic can revive you, you get shot again, you're instantly dead. Instead, it gives you the off chance that you can instantly die. Now, headshots already are, in this game, from what I remember, instant kills. You cannot be revived. So, adding dismemberment to further enhance the effectiveness of RPGs and grenade launchers can change that aspect as well. Do the same thing as headshots. Because in real life, you get hit with a 40mm, you're not coming back. Alright, like, I'm gonna be honest here, the shrapnel wounds to your body, or a grenade, or even an RPG, you're not gonna come back. Like, if it's a direct hit, you're... I mean, in the battlefield scenario, like, people have survived shrapnel wounds, but I'm talking, like, most of the time, it's a pretty bad thing, right? Like, you don't want to get hit with a 40mm or a rocket or anything. So, I mean, obviously, I'm for it. And in the end, the way I look at it is it could just be an option. You know, if you don't want to, well, this kind of comes into the problem of dismemberment, because obviously with dismemberment, it has a gameplay impact. Now, if you don't have dismemberment, but you have minimal blood effects, then it doesn't really alter gameplay, which then having an on-off switch in the options menu is perfectly fine. And some people were talking in the forums saying that Australia and Germany have censorship issues with certain games, and that's outdated information because people in Australia and Germany clearly have games like The Witcher 3 and Red Orchestra and a variety of other games that are censored to some degree but still feature blood and gore. So this is not really an issue of whether or not it's censorship. Like, I mean, who are the individuals playing this game, first of all? Right? You're thinking that you want to target as big a demographic as possible, but people playing this game are playing online. People swear left and right. There's cursing all the time. I personally curse when I play this game because it's intense. I feel like I'm really in a combat situation, and then when shit's hitting the fan and things get intense, people swear. So I think Blood and Gore, obviously there's a little bit of a difference between, you know, cursing and abrasive language versus Blood and Gore, but I mean, in the end, I really don't see why we can't be entrusted as adults to tolerate something like that. Personally, I think it enhances the experience significantly. Red Orchestra 2 was a huge eye-opener when I first played that game. I was like, holy shit, the atmosphere is so dark and gritty. It just gave me this insane perspective of what World War II could have been actually like. And modern times, just the way tactics and weapons have changed and evolved doesn't really mean that that chaotic structure, that chaos and gratuity of war hasn't changed. It's pretty much exactly the same. And if you have the stomach for it, go look up things that happened in Ukraine. There's tons of footage of people in firefights and the crazy shit that happened over there. And in fact, considering there's Russians in this game and militia, it kind of gives you like that. It looks a lot like that, to be honest. So, I don't know. It's really up to the developers, which they've already stated they're not going to. So at this point, I think it has to be a mod. Modders have to get in here and do something about this in the future at some point. If not, I mean, I would really love to see at least an option for additional blood effects in the future, just to enhance that overall experience. It's not about being badass, not about looking cool, it's about giving a realistic depiction of actual warfare. And this game does an excellent job of it, except for that one minor detail. My name has been PepperBelly. Thank you guys for joining me today on this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.